Southern Railfan is the place for amazing videos of all types of trains. Southern Railfan, subscribe today.
Okie dokie, in this video we're going to talk about defect detectors and new protocol for CSX defect detectors, possibly other railroads as well, and how the defect detector is changing, but most importantly how the crews are going to react to those defect detectors. And I really think it's going to be a huge benefit to rail fans that use scanners to track the train. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. We're going to use the layout here as a demonstration of the new process for the defect detectors, at least on CSX as far as I know right now. We're going to use this little building here as our defect detector. And in the recent past, what has happened is once the train gets past the defect detector automatic voice would come on, identify the railroad, the defect detector's milepost, and either say simply no defects or defect recorded. As far as CSX goes, it would announce the information that's been gathered from the train. But now, what is happening is CSX has what's called a greeting announcement, and that has been used in the past. What happens is, as soon as the train hits that circuit for the defect detector announces. It'll, just like for instance around here, it would say CSX defect detector milepost 22.5 or whatever the milepost would be. And then after the train clears the defect detector, then it would make its usual announcement. And CSX has a wide variety of how the defect detectors respond. It would give the milepost again. It could give a car count. Some of the CSX defect detectors give car counts. It would obviously say defect or no defect, and the length. Most all the CSX defect detectors that I've been able to hear over the years always announce the length. Some of them do or may not, well, I guess it would be a better phrase, announce how many cars is on that. Now, what's going to be changing as far as the protocol from CSX beginning May the 1st, the crew has to acknowledge that defect detector. Once everything goes through, from what I understand, once the train passes, the defect detector gives its little spiel, then the crew has to acknowledge that defect detector. Say this is M652, it would go along the lines of something M652, defect detector 225, whatever, no defects. So what that creates now is a longer and more frequent use of the radio for the crew. Okay, the next couple of minutes of the video are taken from a defect detector, how they work video that I made about 10 years ago. So if you're familiar with defect detectors, you can go ahead and skip ahead in the video. But if not, here's a little information on defect detectors. We're going to look at railroad defect detectors. Beginning in the late 70s to early 80s, North American Class 1 railroads started adding radio transmitters with mechanical voices as defect detectors. As the train passed the detectors, the mechanical or pre-recorded voice would sound out the railroad's main radio channel that a train had passed and note any defects that were found. Most often, after the train passed such equipment detector, the mechanical voice would report the railroad name, milepost or location, a track number if applicable, and on some railroads, such as CSX, they'll list the number of axles on the train that passed, and all this is followed with the phrase "no defects" to indicate no problems were detected on the train. Sometimes the location's ambient temperature and train speeds are also noted by the mechanical voice. When a problem is detected, the mechanical voice will often start with a long, high-pitched alarm tone followed by a description of the problem and the axle position within the train where the problem occurred. Crews can use their touch tone hand radios to get the detector to repeat error messages. Defect detectors are equipped with such a mechanical voice are often called talking detectors by railroad crews and railfans. And a lot of railfans will use these detectors along with mainline signaling to be able to keep up with where the train's at. Now we'll safely get in a position where we can use zoom and look at some of the parts. For detecting dragging equipment, a cone-shaped column sits across the whole width of the railroad. You see it there. Attached to a switch, anything dragging from a train will hit the cone, thus pushing it back and breaking the contact. Then it returns to its normal position to prepare for anything else that might be dragging onto the train. The detector will register the action of the flag it has a defect. Brittle bars are still used elsewhere, but still have to be repaired over time. Dragging equipment detector metal flaps need to be replaced because of extensive damage from stuff hitting them. For hot boxes or hot bearings, two infrared eyes sit on each side of the track. You see them there. Staring up at the train's bearings. They register the radiation from every journal that passes over it. If a bearing reaches the maximum temperature for safe travel, the detector will flag and count it as a defect. Some defect detectors will have a white pad on either side of the inside rail. This defect detector does not. Most of these features are used on main lines that see a lot of double stack trains. And what those white pads do is detect weight from one side of the car to the other. And this helps detect if that top stack on double stack or top container has come loose and shifted. It will pick that up in weight. From one side to the other, one side will weigh more than the other. Now let's listen to a Norfolk and Southern defect detector.
99.0, no defects. Norfolk Southern, milepost 99.0, no defects.
All defect detectors are attached to a cooled building, and there's a fan on the back side to keep all the electronics cool. So that is a look at railroad defect detectors. So what that's going to mean for people like me and most likely you that use either a scanner or Broadcastify to track and figure out where the trains are at to be able to get in the best position to film, it's really going to be beneficial for us. That greeting announcement, you know that's where the train is at. It's hitting that defect detector right now. Like I say, in the past you used to have to wait for the defect detector and the train has already passed that point. And Broadcastify, if you use that on your telephone, has a delay. Sometimes that delay on particular Broadcastify channels can be a long time, like 15-20 seconds. And if you're trying to make a decision on the next turn, 15-20 seconds, maybe even as long as 30 seconds is a pretty good long time to wait to see what's going to go on with that. So that greeting is really going to be helpful because we'll know that. We'll be able to listen to the defect detector, milepost, car length, train length, may or may not list the car number. And then the crew is going to be able to acknowledge that defect detector. Now I understand it's probably not good for the crew. It's just something else that they have to do. And you know, like an Amtrak train or something coming through with a short car length doing 70 miles an hour, I'm not real sure how that's going to work. We don't have Amtrak anywhere close around to where I'm at anyway. But it's going to be really beneficial to rail fans as far as more radio traffic to help us to determine where the trains are at. So get your scanners, get on Broadcastify, beginning May the 1st. As far as I know, this is going to be system-wide on at least CSX for now. So we'll get out and see if we can find one and list. I know a couple of crews that have came through the last few days have been practicing using acknowledging the defect detector. So get out there and see what you can find, and we'll see you later.